For the transgression of my people was he stricken, Isaiah 53. Jesus laid down his life for the sheep. Remember how, when we just looked at Virgo, in her left hand she holds spica, that corn of wheat. We witness the Lord coming to die for mankind, being planted into the ground, and his death bringing forth much fruit. John 12:24. So that's what the moon signaled on Kislev 24. Now in Capricorn, the moon has arrived at the area of the transition of the goat into the fish, the living fish, the quickened and the saved, having become fishers of men, the risen by the power of the Lord's death and resurrection, proceeding from the dying goat, the goat which made atonement. And yet they form only one body. In like manner, the bride has become one with Christ. Its ancient origins reveals a prophetic knowledge, which only he possessed who knew that in the fullness of time he would send forth his Son, the light of the world coming down. Even the sign of Jonah is tied to Capricorn, as well as to Cetus the sea monster. We've covered that before. Because Jonah himself was perceived as Dagon, the little g god of the Ninevites. And after having spent 3 days in the belly of the great fish, likely physically resembling him as well, being white and spewed out by the fish itself. So, biblical astronomer Joseph Seiss ties the half-fish god of the Babylonians to Capricorn. So you can read more about that over here. The enemy signaling of the ample pointing forward to the post-Christmas season, the winter solstice season, and their two, quote-unquote, pet goats. 2 pet goats in the heaven, 2001, 2022. We can recognize how the enemy attempts to distort and mimic the death and resurrection picture with the One World Freedom Tower, first and foremost. Remember the first 9/11, that was the taking down of the Twin Towers, symbolizing Gemini in the heavens. And that was replaced with a hybrid, the One World Freedom Tower, a hybrid of as above, so below, 2 becoming 1, a hybrid just like Capricorn. In the iPad 2 animation, the false Messiah type arrives on the scene from a Vesica Pisces-shaped cave, the location of the ritual goat slaughter, to be rebirthed as a King of Hearts, a Saint Valentine type tied to Lupercalia. He's riding on a solar bark of Horus, emerging from the underworld onto the celestial river we know to be Eridanus, flowing from Orion, but now flowing toward Orion, with the Giza pyramids reflecting its belt stars in the area known as the Celestial Silver Gate. He awakens in between Scorpio and Orion as the backdrop. Orion, known as the retrieving hand from the ancient Lakota constellation, and there we see the post-winter solstice sun, in addition to cosmic judgment starting. The Hierophant man-child, Ludovic, appears to awaken after a new moon in Capricorn, because we see a first sliver of the moon in that water puddle. We're going to see it in the visuals a little bit later, next to a coiled serpentine Capricorn-shaped figure. Saturn, associated with Satan and Kronos, a little g god of time, is currently positioned at the tail end of Capricorn. That could reflect the occult concept of riding the solar goat, which is directly tied to December 25th, and the occult concept of their deity's death and resurrection. The iPad 2 animation event sequence leads to America being destroyed and declared scapegoat Babylon, which is the second pet goat. You can see that in slide number 4. After the rollout of the CV-19 injections, which was the crowning of the serpent ritual, Corona Borealis above the constellation Serpens, we have witnessed the induced transformation of the mind and the pharmacological controlled man-child, emulating Hierophant, Helios, Sol Invictus, and a prelude to the post-rapture beast system and the mark of the beast, aka a great reset to Zep Tepi, the beginning or the first time. That is also mirrored in what they consider to be Ipet, which is a reference in the ancient Dendera chart to the central constellation in the north, Draco, the red dragon, the great red dragon of Revelation 12, is also known as Draco, but also as Ipet, the Nile goddess of fertility. So that is what we are looking at in the animation. From beginning to end, the captive barcoded goat refers to the time frame of Purim with the casting of lots, the rejection of Jesus as the one and true God of all things, to be replaced by a Baphomet type, a goat of Mendes type. A false sacrificial atonement is offered. 9/11/2001 is anchored as end and the beginning. The fall of the Twin Towers was the first pet goat, the DNA pillars of Gemini, the pentagon-shaped Auriga, the charioteer, carrying 2 kid goats in the celestial Silver Gate, were destroyed, and the moon at the time was a witness. The moon was in the Silver Gate, underneath Auriga, which resembled the Pentagon, looking at Gemini, the Twin Towers. The wintertime destruction of America Babylon will likely be the next ritual slaughter episode. The Capricorn altar of sacrifice and rebirth, a rising of the King of Hearts. So we see the King of Heart type arriving on the scene and his restraint being removed, the crown of thorns disappearing from its head. I believe this young prince is one of the unholy trinity, next to Obama as the first beast and the Pope as the false prophet. And his positioning has been a prince and a king of hearts. So here we see the awakening of their man-child figure, Ludovic, after the first sliver of the moon is seen reflected in this puddle, next to the serpentine shape as a Capricorn. And we know that the island of Hawaii is shaped as both a sacrificial lamb and a sacrificial goat, and we see the collision of the Osama bin Laden figure with the island shaped as a Y. The atonement altar of Elijah with 4 corners or 4 cones in the center of the Pacific Ring of Fire. The retrieving hand from the constellation Orion with the constellation Scorpio from the vantage point of the outer ice ring, or what we refer to as the South Pole, and the needle coming from the heavens, but also the onset of cosmic judgment. And we know that the Giza Plateau is a reflection of the Lord's altar and witnessing stone, the Khufu pyramid especially, and the Lord is said to be both the corner and the capstone. So the stone being laid was also reflected in history, as noted by Isaiah in the bridal pyramid in stone. So we have multiple witnesses in scripture, but also in physical buildings, as well as our temple bodies, of the foundation stone of the Lord being laid. And here is a description of the elite ritual initiation, what they refer to as riding the goat. I'm not going to spend my time covering that, but if you'd like, you can read that in the article. So zooming in, we can see a crescent moon reflected in the pool next to Ludovic's egghead, laying on a Capricorn sign formed by the serpent. The pool reflection shows a small waning crescent moon, which would indicate there is a waxing crescent moon in the sky, reflections being opposite. Note, if you decide to watch the video, how at this exact moment the Ludovic character, who symbolizes Aleister Crowley and a young sun god type, calls out Abraham as we read his lips, potentially pointing to the false flag sinking of the USS Abraham Lincoln as prophesied by a few watchmen before the rapture as one of the notable signs. And the aircraft carriers are, I believe, referred in scripture as the as one of the fortresses of Ephraim. And then some more biblical details with regard to the constellation Capricorn. Capricorn, the atonement goat, springing forth from him is the fish, the spiritual fruition tied to the blood atonement. And these are the deacons of Capricorn. So if you'd like to read more detail about what the deacons mean, you can do so over here. And then more insight with regard to the occult interpretation of Capricorn. Its ties to the winter solstice, as I explained, the December solstice used to take place in the constellation Capricorn until 130 BC. Here you can read more about the unmasking of the enemy's dark goats. The celestial reference to the December 26, 2019 total solar eclipse in Capricorn visualized over here. So they were marking that exit at that time also. The spiritual midnight marker at winter time, at the time of a heavy winter storm, and then the fire chute for the Judas goat, which leads the sheep to slaughter, but escapes himself, visualized in the red exit. So that is a choice between either accepting Christ's blood atonement or being led to slaughter. So that is once again connected to Capricorn. Within the etymology of the word Capricorn, a great escape is hidden. Luke 21, the Lord tells us to be watchful and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and the cares of this life. And so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come upon all them that dwell on the face of the earth. Remember that the snare was laid up for the Magi after December 25th in 2 BC. Watch therefore and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, or that shall come upon the earth, and stand before the Son of Man. And remember that Jesus escaped out of the hands of the Sanhedrin at the Feast of Dedication. And here the word escape is used once more. The word escape and the name of the constellation Capricorn are connected in their word origin. So linguistically, the word escape and the root word in cape and caper are related to the root word Capri in Capricorn. And the root wording of escape, originally to mean to throw off the cowl, formed from X and the Latin kappa, has evolved into the word escape. They see Capricorn as an entry point of their little g gods. Golgotha in Capricorn. Golgotha is connected to the sign of Capricorn as well. The definition pertaining to the skull is found within both the words Capricorn and Golgotha. In the Old Testament, atonement is expressed by the word kafar, whose root meaning is to cover over. The noun related to this verb, kofar, is mainly used of the ransom price that covers an offense. We also see that picture in the altar of redemption Libra. The ritual of the Day of Atonement should be studied, and in particular the part played by the two goats. That is what the enemy seeks to distort, the atonement goat and the goat sent into the wilderness. The high priest sprinkled the blood on the atonement cover, kaporeth, Capri meaning goat, and corn meaning horn. So the horn of the goat. And that is the conclusion of what I wanted to share with you today. So I believe the midnight marker is visible in the heavens. I should say a midnight marker, not the midnight marker. But I believe it is a midnight marker worthy of our consideration. And should this day come and go without any event, we know that we are in the Lord's perfect timing. And I believe this picture is the most beautiful picture to take away.